people involved. Until such time that we come together again in ways that allow something like the Arts Trail to run, Portal hopes that we can bridge some of the gap. We will get back there to a live Surf Coast Arts Trail, which is why I'm delighted to introduce some of our guests for today's session, women who have lived the Arts Trail from one side and often more than just one since its inception. The Surf Coast Arts Trail is their baby, a fabulous, inspirational, utterly delightful and totally full-on 2 days in the Surf Coast Shire's annual calendar. So I'm very pleased to introduce to you Julie Dyer, who is the former Arts Development Officer of the Surf Coast Shire and joining us for her second Sunday morning session. Julie and her family moved to the Surf Coast in 1995. Initially, Julie discovered and met people by volunteering in the arts community, then commenced work as the Arts Development Officer. Julie has worked with local artists and the broader community on a plethora of projects across many sectors. She continues to be involved in the local arts community, currently in the executive of Surf Coast Arts Inc., and she looks forward to the arts growing in strength and diversity. Our next guest is hugely renowned Surf Coast artist Cinnamon Stephens. Cinnamon has been creating since 1992. She chooses steel and copper as her prominent medium when making her purely sculptural pieces and creative functional artworks. She's inspired by organic and whimsical shapes and forms, and her artwork is very distinctive. With 11 solo exhibitions and numerous group shows under her belt, Cinnamon's work can be found in restaurants, cafes, and private residences all over Victoria. Thanks for being with us, Cinnamon. Our second artist, and someone who's likewise been behind the trail since very early on, is Pat McKenzie. Pat's artistic journey began seriously after moving to live in Aireys Inlet in 1995, so you all came around the same time. She's been a part of the Surf Coast Arts Trail since its inception 9 years ago, when she opened her studio to visitors and enjoys meeting and discussing her work and the farm. Pat was commissioned to paint 12 watercolours for the Great Ocean Road Chocolaterie and Ice Creamery, and these images are now used on their gourmet range of chocolates. Pat is a past president and treasurer of the Anglesey Art House, and she's presently working on a body of work for a solo exhibition in the Eagle's Nest Fine Art Gallery in Aireys Inlet, scheduled for next April. I'd now like to introduce you to the moderator for today's panel session, Councillor Margot Smith. Margot Smith is a councillor on the Surf Coast Shire and a passionate supporter of the arts in all its forms. Prior to being elected to council, she had a career in retail with over 30 years' experience in Coles and Wesfarmers. She loves reading, the opera and the outdoors, and wishes she had some artistic talent. Now, before I let Margot in there, she did just show us a very beautiful stitched cushion cover, so I'm not sure about that. But anyway, before I pass over to council, we just do need to do a little bit of housekeeping. We'd really love to encourage everyone who's watching to express their thoughts about the session via the chat function at the bottom of your screen. We are collating this feedback, and that's going to help council in programming the future arts and culture things that come out of council. So it's a really good opportunity for you to let us know what you want to see more of. We'll also be inviting questions from the audience at the end of the session. So if you have any questions for either of our presenters today, please note them down and get ready to chat them into the chat function when we call on you. Excuse me. Last week, we've actually changed our format slightly and moved to Zoom's upgraded webinar for these August sessions. So last week, some people were putting questions into the chat function, but that we weren't seeing them ourselves. So when you are doing that chat, just look at the chat function and make sure that you're selecting all panelists and everyone. And that way, everyone will be able to see it, including me, when I feed those questions to Margot later. But for now, I'm going to leave you in Margot's very safe hands, and let's hear a little bit more on how this incredible event came to be. Thanks, Margot.
Thank you, Harriet, and it's great to actually be here. Really great introduction from you, Harriet, and I am delighted to actually be here as a moderator. I'm not sure exactly how much I'll be able to moderate the conversation of these ladies. We have had a fabulous time practicing, rehearsing, and I hope our end product for you today is as entertaining as we've found it and on the way through. I would like to start though by acknowledging the Eastern Maar and the Wathaurong people as traditional custodians of the Surf Coast Shire region, and pay my respects to their ancestors and elders past, present and emerging, and all of as the oldest living culture on earth, we recognise and uphold their relationship to their traditional lands. And for those that might be on other lands, I extend that as well. It's a terrific thing to actually have this arts trail, and reflecting that normally on this weekend when I sort of go out, I start my arts trail by walking 100 metres down the road to the Solly's studio out the back, and it's a bit unfortunate not being able to do that because we're not allowed visitors, but I want to congratulate all those that have been involved this year in doing the virtual arts trail, and just make a plug for that at the moment, and how good it is to hear from the artists in their studios. I haven't watched them all of the ones that have been released, but I've sort of seen some of them out there with Roger Brown. Cinnamon has had one out there which she knows that she's got lots of views on. She's counting them, so if you haven't seen it, go. She gets motivated by numbers. Minerva, Salt and Pepper, Jill Giles, and of course the Sollies. So it's great to have a little bit of that virtual arts trail there, and being able to see in people's houses, even if we can't go, or into their studios. So we're here to talk about the arts trail and how it developed, how it started, and there's some great stories. And so I think what I'd like to actually start with is for all of you to just give a little insight into what you were doing around the time that this arts trail started. So I think it was 9 years ago, or this would have been the 9th, and sort of how you got involved. And because it was Pat's birthday yesterday, and she said I wasn't meant to say that, but it does actually make it an easy way of introducing Pat. So Pat, would you like to start?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Of course, you have to go back earlier than 9 years ago, because that's when the arts trail started. So after I moved from Warrandyte in Melbourne down to Aireys Inlet, I was like you, a lot of you people, I'm sure, you'd walk around and looking at this beautiful place that we live in, and I would say, oh, that's just so gorgeous, I wish I could paint that. And even though I did pass painting or art at year 12 at high school, which that and geography was the only 2 subjects that I did pass in year 12, but art being one of them. And both my parents were artists, and my grandfather. So I think it's probably, I've always been interested in art, but I live on the farm at Aireys Inlet, and we've got quite a lot of acres here, and we adgist horses. And one of the ladies who adgisted horses with us was Gwyn Wise. And Gwyn has been a member of the Anglesea Art House since its inception. So she talked me into going to the Anglesea Art House, which met in those days at one of the rooms at the Anglesea Community Hall. So this must have been probably 25 years ago now. So then I started my journey on learning how to paint in oil colour. But of course I'd started and I'd been painting for a while, and then I realised, well, I might be able to paint, but I don't know how to draw, because my husband would say if that boat was in the water, it would go around in circles. You know, I had no idea. So then I started drawing, and then I needed to learn how to paint in watercolour. So I then became, as the art house then moved with Jan Dick's assistance, of course, to its present position now, taking over the old Scout Hall in Anglesea. So I became heavily involved in the Anglesea Art House, which I became president. And around the time of, if it was 9 years, about 12 years before that, I was also became the president of the art house, and I also then was involved in working out people from Melbourne to come down to the art house to take weekend workshops. So a friend of mine in Melbourne said that I should go and visit the Nillumbuk Arts Trail because it was fantastic. So I was looking for somebody to come and take a watercolour workshop and another person in acrylic workshop. So the weekend that was allotted to up there, I took myself around to their arts trail and was astounded by their arts trail book. It was a book. It was quite a thick book. It cost every person $200 to go in this book of the Arts Trail. And not only that, but the committee then had to come to their studios to inspect their studio to see if it was good enough to go into this book. Like, they didn't only want the money, they wanted to make sure you knew what you were doing as well. So I had this idea that we really needed an arts trail, and also being the president of the art house, I think we had about 160 members back then in those times. Now that's a lot of people. There were painters, there were potters, printers. We weren't into glass then. Potters, printer, all sorts of painting. So it was quite a felt making, yes. Adele was doing that back in those days.
Yeah.
So I felt it was something that I was being really selfish, of course, so that it would really benefit the art house to have an arts trail, and we'd try and get as many people as we could to come through. And I would just tack on the end, of course, because I wanted people to come to my studio too. So that's how I became involved, and I'll probably go a bit further on in other things about my part in the arts trail after Julie has her say, and Cinnamon.
Very good. Thanks, Pat. And then Julie, you were working at the Shire at that time as the Arts Development Officer. I'm not sure sort of how good the support was from the Shire. We've always talked about that, but at other times. But you've been a great supporter all those years that you were at the Shire. Where were you at that time?
So at that time, just doing same old, lots of things, working with the community. Like, it's nearly 10 years ago. It's quite an interesting when you look back. There were festivals happening. So I was working across the board, and I was watching a burgeoning community, and I'd been watching other things happening too. But generally, it was pretty well working as normal with me in as many ways as possible. One of the main projects that I did for a lot of the years was do the Shire Calendar. And that was a great way for me to meet lots of the different artists over the years and just see the diversity of the people and the talent that was out there. So, yeah, that'll do from me for the moment.
Yeah, and for those that actually probably don't know, so Julie was this sort of dynamo that was really only part-time, but managed to actually work about get through the work of about three people at the time to sort of get all of these things done, and the support, and really very well respected by all the councillors and the team within the Shire. Yeah.
And thank you. And I'm just going to note here, if I look like I'm not taking part, I am. I'm just hunting out images, so just ignore me at different times when I stop looking like I'm being intent. I'm just going to hunt up some images of Cinnamon now. We've been looking at some of Pat's early watercolours, so now we're looking at some stuff about Cinnamon. Okay.
Yeah. So then, Cinnamon, you talked to me before about the fact that you had your own little mini arts trail going anyway. So tell us about where you were.
Well, hello, hi everyone.
Oh.
So I, at this early stage, I was in Geelong, and I studied in Ballarat in the early 90s, and came back to Geelong with a little art studio, and it quickly became apparent there wasn't much promotion going on in Geelong. There was lots of little things happening in the 90s. I mean, there was the Robert Drummond and Paddy Semler's Fine Arts School. There was lots of music happening around different venues over the years, and the same little bunch of people would be at all these events. And I just thought, you know, more people need to know about what's happening in Geelong. So in the mid-90s, I started doing this, the Moon Times, which you can see here, a hand-drawn, it became an A3 double-sided, photocopied on colourful paper publication. And I used to just, that's how I got to know a lot of people around the whole region, not just Geelong. And regular contributors. I had sponsors that used to contribute a bit of money to put printed things on the back. And it was through this process of gathering information every month. For 11 and a half years I did this. I met Julie during this because there was so much happening on the Surf Coast. I was highly jealous being in Geelong, trying to make things happen, and there just seemed to be so much amazing things and amazing people on the Surf Coast. Also around 1994, 95, I did, with the help of a few others, create a little moon trail, we called it, in Geelong. And there was 6 artists, I think, in 3 venues. And of course, this is before social media. I was thinking about it this morning. I think this is why I love social media so much and use it all the time. It's because I was promoting events and trying to make things happen back in the days when all we had was the chance, maybe if a footballer's wife wasn't in the Geelong Addy, there might be a little space for some art. And it was just emailing out to people, and, you know, mailing lists of the different art studios, and to have a little arts trail. And I still get people to this day who remember coming to my little studio in Geelong West. And the benefit of it back then, which is still the benefit now, it's the cross promotion. So you've got different artists with their own little followers, but when you have a trail, you get a crossover, so people get to meet other artists, or, you know, see other things that they mightn't normally see. And I think this is why I have always loved supporting and promoting the arts, because it's that crossover, and even crossover of art forms, you know, artworks at a music event, or, you know, poetry at a sculpture event. And, you know, I just love promoting the arts. So this is what I was doing back then. And then when I was fortunate enough to move into the Surf Coast Shire, I was very excited. And Julie jumped on me, and we did a community project almost straight away in Winchelsea, and then in Deans Marsh, and on it went. So I was kind of already on Julie's radar when she had this idea that Pat had talked about having an art trail, and I just thought, wow, to be actually supported and promoted by the Shire, not have to do everything yourself, what an absolute amazing idea. So I was in boots and all.
Oh, there's so many good things in that around the sort of importance of social media in terms of promoting, and sort of the artists themselves about working together, and also the role of community projects and all of that, you know, bringing people out and bringing them together. And so, you know, we then go to talk about sort of what was going on in other places, and the potential of art trails. And my understanding, Pat, was that you just nagged and nagged and nagged. I don't know how many years did you have to nag, or did Julie sort of get sick of you pretty early?
No, I'm really jealous of Cinnamon's relationship with Julie, because I'd never met this Julie Dyer. So I rang her up to make an appointment to go and see her about 2 years before we got to the Arts Trail business. And she's a very nice lady. From my little sheltered perspective on the farm and being very isolated, I meet this wonderful, vibrant lady that scared the shit out of me because she's so vibrant. So I put my views to Julie and said that we really need to get an arts trail going along. And of course, she agreed with absolutely everything I said. And I thought, oh, that was a good meeting. And I, of course, didn't realise just how involved with everything else she was involved with at the time. So in about another 12 months after not hearing anything, I made another appointment to go and see Julie. And I can't even remember the second meeting. I remember the first meeting very clearly, Julie, but by then I think I'd got to meet her quite a few other times via the art house, and to find out what a lovely woman she was. And she really was on our side about getting an arts trail up and running. But she was the lady that had to deal with the council and budgets. You know, I'd never heard of budgets before. What's this budget business all about? So it took 2 years of getting meetings. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call from Julie saying that I want to have a meeting with you, with Cinnamon, about setting up an arts trail. So in the end, it was really easy, but it just took a little while. And of course, I now understand why it took a little while.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure I understand why it took a while, given you know, budgets and pressures on budgets and how long council takes to make these decisions. And you know, we try, but you know, So good on Julie for persisting. And I'd have to say, you know, as far as a supporter of the arts community, there is no one that's better at supporting the artists than Julie in our region. So Julie, so the background there of what you had to go through for 2 years of getting I wasn't on council, so I can. You know,
no, that's all right. So
that Rose Hodge was probably a little bit hard to deal with, was it, Julie?
Well, it wasn't really even that. So in the day, I mean, the budget was what it was, and there wasn't much, and so I had a little bit of budget that was discretionary, and we'd had some bits and pieces that we could use to help get the arts trail going. But even before that, whilst it was nice to have Pat and sort of general chatting as a good idea, I actually felt that I really needed to put it out to the community. So to see if there really was going to be a following and if people were keen. So my logistics of doing that was actually having a Sunday afternoon meeting at Deans Marsh Hall. Now, if you get anyone to come out on a Sunday afternoon and from to the middle of, you know, or the edge of the Shire,
God knows.
That was a good indication. So we had about 35 people come, and they were from all over the Shire. So for me, that was a real validation of me being able to turn around and go, okay, we're going to make this happen. And then it went on from there. So initially we didn't have a designer in-house at council, so we had to do things like find someone. So I'm going to put out a great
Julie, you're muted or something.
My earphones just went strange then.
Yes, he just went silent.
Yeah. Well, my earphones just told me my battery was uncharged.
Oh, no.
So that's all right. Anyway, so so Narelle gave us some options of what the logo could be, and we did it pretty democratically, and we put it out to people who were happy to be a small committee at the time to
I've got it here.
have a look. Yeah, So that's great, and colours and everything. And I even did a bit of a box pop around the Shire offices and went and asked people, you know, colours and things that made an impact. So that's where we got those colours from that we actually started with. And after the first year of just using flags and bits and pieces that we had as part of the events kit, we started to lash out. Whoa, we're talking about doing things on the smell of an oily rag and buying a few of the barley flags and poles and things like that to get going. Yeah.
But Julie, before we even got to that stage, I remember the meeting where we had to decide when we were going to run this arts trail, and I'm sure you remember that meeting very clearly. Right.
I think Pat, you had some preference. You didn't like the middle of winter. Is there something about the middle of winter that distresses you?
Something about living on a farm.
Yes, well, we go to this meeting and to decide about the arts trail, and Julie was very adamant that she could get more money out of council if the arts trail was held in August. Now, I'm not sure whether you guys know about August, but August is the wettest month of the year. August is the coldest month of the year. My studio is situated on a farm. Now, to get to my studio, you need to drive in from a dirt road. You need to drive up a dirt track, and then from the sheds, you drive on a one-way car track up to my studio. Now, the one-way track, if you happen to drive off, my husband would have had to have gone and got the tractor out of the shed, come and got the snatch strap and pulled you out of the mud. And then you get up to my studio where there is a turning circle, which if you went off the turning circle, you would again stay in the mud, and there's only enough room for 4 cars at my studio. That's just probably why I really wasn't all that keen on having it in August.
But Kat, so much fun and adventure in doing that.
Yes, Margot, you're not married to my husband.
No, thank goodness.
the first year, like, I live on a beautiful farm, and I went out for the day, and this was a week before the arts trail. And when I got home from the shed up to the house, on both sides of the track were beautifully placed white fence posts about 1 metre apart. And not only that, they were around both sides of the car parking with signs everywhere. And when you drove up this one-way track, on my right, there was a beautiful big sign that said, "Mud, glorious mud." And I had to smile, but I'm going, oh. Anyway, that lasted for a few years. So Graham he met every visitor that came to my place down at the yards, and he would direct the traffic. So I'd be in my studio at the house talking to people, and then I'd get a phone call. "Would you please tell the person in the green Ford Mustang, could they please move their car, because I need to send somebody else up to you, and you're right in the middle of this massive sale," and you'd get the phone call, "Please tell that person to move." So it was an interesting few years early on. That was why, going back, that was why I really didn't think that August was a very good idea to have the arts trail.
Yeah, well, all part of the fun, Pat, and I know exactly why Julie would have pressed it to be at that time of the year. I know, because we all try to get more visitors down and do more things, and in fact, it's a great way of actually getting out and doing things there. So Cinnamon, you must have been overexcited by the fact that you could turn your little mini arts trail idea into something a lot bigger, and you'd sort of come to join the centre of the universe in terms of the creative state. So tell us about your approach to all of this.
Well, like I said before, I just thought it was a brilliant idea, and I was very quickly spruiking it to every artist I knew. And we are lucky. I think we're very fortunate in the Anglesey area because, as you know, Margot, we're the centre, pretty much. We're the centre of the Shire. So we tended from the get-go to get lots of visitors, which was just a bonus of the location, I think. But also we do have a number of very different and diverse artists living and working in Anglesey all year round. So this little fishy here, I actually began making these fish back in the Geelong West days. They're created from upcycled coat hanger wire and copper electrical wire, and the only recycled washers and scraps of copper. So completely upcycling and sustainable art before it was fashionable. And so these little guys, the first few, because the whole idea of the arts trail to me personally is people visiting, being able to visit an artist's studio and to actually see how they work, where they work, what they're inspired by, you know, their gardens, the environment, the farm, whatever, the environment that they create in. And the person leaves with a little bit of an insight as to what is behind the art, the final product. So I've always been a passionate one of the artists on the trail that actually demonstrates during the trail, which isn't an easy task. That's a very young me there.
I was going to say, you're looking a whole lot younger there, Julie.
Taken by my son, so hence when he was very little. Oh, that's cute. So that's my studio, very messy studio. And so I always like to have a little project on the go and to be able to talk to people and demonstrate during the trail. There's my mother.
Yeah.
Very good there. There at Moongate Studios. Hi, if you're watching. I don't normally weld in front of people, and people don't necessarily get to see people welding very often. So I have that extra bonus of people coming and I'll have my goggles on, I'll be welding away, and sometimes I'll look up and there's about 15 people in the studio all staring, and they just get mesmerised by the flame, and it's a great way to keep kids quiet as well, I've realised. But I enjoy that side of it, and for those 2 days, they're the only 2 days in the year that I actually create while people are watching and explain and answer questions and do all that. I have modified my practice over the years, but I can talk about that later. But I think the trail is an invaluable experience for people to come, and it breaks down that barrier. You know, they can actually come and meet the artist, talk to the artist in their space, not feel obligated that they might have to buy something, you know, which some people feel when they go into a gallery setting. It just breaks that barrier down, and hopefully allows people to, you know, order more work or commission work in the future. So I could talk for hours about the bonuses of Arts Trail.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, and I think sort of from someone that's, you know, from my own personal experience of actually going around, it is wonderful to see the spaces in which you work and how you work, and sort of that whole sort of production of things and what inspires you. So I think many of us that do go around are really grateful for the fact that you open up your spaces and open up your hearts to actually allow us to sort of come in and feel like we're sort of participating and part of it. And so we get a little bit of, sort of that your satisfaction sort of rubs off a bit onto us by actually sort of the participation. Unfortunately, the artistic talent doesn't rub off of us. So, but it's like, you know, I think there's also been some really good things about, being able to see how certain things are actually done, which you otherwise wouldn't be able to see in a gallery when you actually just show your finished product. And so that whole intricacy of things.
Yeah.
So Julie, you know, we've made the decision. We ran the first one, so you know it's actually been able to be built on year in, year out. How did you actually sort of approach it afterwards to determine sort of how we would keep continuing to have this trail and what we'd learnt about it?
Well, part of it was, I'm just going to flip you to a photo of, I didn't make the artist sort of sit back.
No.
So part of it was actually hands-on. And before we actually had core flutes printed up and things like that, we did a lot of photocopying and laminating, and I was upskilling the artists in a whole heap of different ways. And making the visitors books. So to make it valid and to try and get funding, et cetera, we really did take a lot of details and data. So we actually have a lot of statistics on how many people visited and where they were from and things like that, which has been quite extraordinary to see the build up. Next to Pat is a lovely artist, and she's at Minya, and she's by herself. And the very first year she had 9 people through for the whole weekend, but really she held in there, and she would come along to the Working Bees and be part of it. And for her, I mean, the numbers grew, and she wasn't necessarily alone, and people were sort of started to learn to drive further afield. So all of that, it wasn't just the artists getting things out of it, it was also the punters who were coming along to visit, who all of a sudden had that trust to go, okay, well, let's go and see a bit further on. Sorry, Pat.
Julie, I just wanted to say something about the maps just at the beginning, because when you decided that you were going to put everybody onto a map, then anyone that applied had to put a photograph and a bit of a spiel about themselves. So my philosophy about this map, how many people were going to be on it, there's the map. So you don't get a lot of space. And I thought, well, I live, you know, sort of 5 minutes out of Aries Inlet. I'm in competition with all of these other wonderful artists. So how am I going to get them to my place to look at my work? I thought, no one, you just about have to bring a packed lunch to come out and visit me. So I decided that I wouldn't talk much about my work. All I did was said that I work in all mediums. I have a website, and the rest of the time I put a blurb about the farm, and that's all I did. So when I put that up, the first year, I remember I got so excited about 11 o'clock when one car drove up my driveway. I remember feeling just, oh my goodness, someone's actually coming. So the first year, like Bev, she had 8 people. I think I had 20 for that first year. And the best form of advertising really is word of mouth. So as the years have gone by, I'm now up to, I don't know, over a couple of 100 people. But I'm absolutely gobsmacked how many people I'll say, now, where do you come from? I've had so many people say, oh, Bamborough Road in Aries Inlet. Now, that's about 1 kilometre away. I've never seen them before, never knew they existed. And that was just, you know, absolutely incredible. So I've got a whole new lot of people I can now wave to at the top shop when we go to there. And so we found, like Cinnamon found in Anglesea, in Aries Inlet, Lee Powell, who lives on Bamborough Road, who's a printer, she would say to her visitors, oh, have you been up to see Pat at the Glen? And then I'd pass them down to Nikki Perkin at Fairhaven or to Sue Corbett at Fairhaven, and vice versa. So you have this wonderful community camaraderie, I guess, but also the people that you've met just from your own area is just mind-blowing, really, let alone the others that have come all the way from Geelong or Melbourne. So it's very interesting just to see. It's a progressive increase in people, definitely. And now, of course, as Cinnamon's saying, with Facebook and the social media, that adds another element to it. But it also can be too big, I think, too. So it's nice when just a few people at the one time come, not like at Cinnamon's where you've got 25,000 people. I don't know. So I can talk to just
Not
a
quite
few of them.
that, no.
So Cinnamon,
but that's the point. It's a
Cinnamon,
personal touch.
yeah. Cinnamon,
Yes.
tell us how you deal with your 25,000 people that come to visit your place, you know?
Interesting point, actually.
Yeah.
There is just me sitting here at the moment, but I'm actually part of a dynamic duo. My husband, Rowan, is a fantastic front of house person during the arts trail. Not only does he go put up all the flags and the signs, but he sits out on the front.
There he is.
There he is.
Hair's a bit longer now because of isolation. So I set on Arts Trail weekend, I set up artwork out the front of the house. We've got a nice big veranda, so we have artwork set up along there and in the garden. And Rowan meets people there and polices their signature of the book. No one gets past that. And then he kind of monitors, because we've only got a little track that takes you around the side of the house up to the studio, where I'm, of course, flat out all day just welding. So he monitors, he kind of gets a feel of the flow, because people tend to go up, they'll talk to me, and then they'll wander around the garden, and then they'll come back out. So Rowan tends to monitor how many people go up at a time. And if there's too many people up there, he knows that, you know, I'd be inundated. He holds them back, or he talks about things out the front and, you know, starts conversation. So it's really lovely. And in the latter years, I've been fortunate to get people who come specifically with their little piece of paper and their measurements and their ideas. I don't know why they don't come on another day, but again, the barriers have been broken on Arts Trail weekend, and they want to actually commission an artwork. So Rowan tends to make sure that they have a little bit of private time with me. So he'll either get them to come back later, or he'll actually walk up and introduce. So when I see him appear, I know I've either made a sale or I've got someone that actually wants to speak, because often people come and they say, oh yeah, we were there at the Arts Trail. I'm like, oh, were you? And they'll just say, oh yeah, we didn't get to talk because you were too busy. So there's pros and cons to having lots of people come at once, but look, it's, you know, I just love it. So I think last time we had about 250, and the Sollies probably have 3 times that amount, but that's, as Rowan and I have said, we wouldn't really want any more. You know, that's enough. That's constant all day, all weekend.
Well, I am actually one of those fortunate people, Cinnamon, that has actually commissioned some of your art.
Yes.
Having been given a gift, and it is, you know, it is sort of one of those things that's actually come from the Arts Trail and knowing who's around and what they.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's a terrific thing, I think, for us to actually know who the artists are in our community and understand sort of what they produce. So I think to every artist out there that's participated in an Arts Trail, that I can say that I feel really grateful that you've actually done that. And I know that myself and my fellow councillors are really proud of the fact that we've got this event in our shire, and so, you know, we look forward to actually continuing. I'm making it sound like I'm winding up. I'm not winding up.
Yeah,
I'm not winding up to finish. I'm winding up to continue. So
can I just interject?
Yes.
Just for a moment, that the sea dragon and the pre-picture. There was a stage I started making the fish that we saw earlier during the Arts Trail while people were there, and they were literally buying them as I was making them. I remember one year I thought, this is just crazy town, and then I started making these little guys, which take longer, of course, And again, people were buying. But what I discovered was my brain was exploding by the end of the weekend because, and I don't know, Pat, you might think the same thing, but it's like your brain, you got two halves of the brain. One part creates, and you need the other half to talk and explain to people what you're doing and coordinating sales and all that sort of stuff. And by the end of the weekend, the two halves are just like smoke coming off them. And that's when Julie would arrive after her whirlwind visit of 10,000 studios, and we'd pop open the champagne and just debrief to each other. Because so I don't do this anymore. I tend to pre-make something big before the trial, and then I'll just twiddle like this. I'll do the framework, and then I'll just twiddle with the little bits while people are chatting. Much easier. So that's something I've learned. You were probably going to say next, how have we developed over the years? Well, this is how
moderator, take over, Cinnamon.
Telepathic here. So
how have you developed?
Personally, I've learned how to pace myself during the weekend, because it can be a very demanding, exhausting weekend, as great as it is. So this is an example of last year, because I actually had an exhibition booked straight after the arts trial. So I had pre-made the frame of this butterfly, and then I spent the entire weekend twiddling, as I call it. So with the oxy torch, just welding little teeny tiny little bits, and what you get is a very highly detailed artwork by the end of it. So each art trail now, I end up with this amazing art trail artwork. But what happened with this one, I had the exhibition opening, and this woman came up and said, I saw you making that during the trail, and she bought it because she felt like she was part of it. And I thought, well, that just, that's just another magic part.
That's terrific. And so, Julie, speaking about pacing yourself, I know that, community members that go along need to do a lot of pacing themselves. So how did you go about sort of community engagement with this, and what have we learned and sort of developed over the years with that?
Well, there's sort of the two sides of the community development. There's the artists who always complain that because they're on the arts trail, they don't actually get to meet one another. So in the end, I'm just sort of trying to get my cursor over, sorry. We ended up having some launches, and the launches were fabulous because apart from making everyone come and collect their collateral of their flags and bits and pieces for the weekend, it actually meant that the artists could actually meet one another and talk to one another. And even along the way, we ended up, this was a very early one, really, really early. And so they hadn't
the main
seen
point really was to drink the Shire's champagne and eat your food, really, Julie. Got nothing to do with anything else.
Oh, no, but it was a great thing to have happen, because it really did mean, he's an actual council officer. So it meant that they could actually meet and hear how excited and important the arts trail was. There's Margot.
Hey.
Margot.
Oh, my hair wasn't quite so grey then.
No, and it really was an opportunity for a broader thing. So one small event prior to the big weekend event was the importance of the arts trail. And as I said, sure, for me, it was the logistics of you coming to collect your gear and what have you, but it also did mean that you could actually connect and discover the other artists and have a chat. And those ones who were maybe their first or second arts trail could speak to the people who had been more experienced on the arts trail.
Yes.
And then alternatively, with the punters coming along on the arts trail, it, as Pat says, and Cinnamon too, really, you're getting your locals coming out, and as a community connectedness and going into your community and meeting one another, you you can't pay money to get that sort of thing happening, and that's just so important. And then all of a sudden people appreciate the depths of talents, and you know, you might have this man who's just this quiet little guy who lives next door to you, but when he opens his garage, Roger's there with his timber workers and making the most extraordinary pieces of art. And for him, so he went from being on the arts trail, he actually then got the confidence to enter a piece into the calendar comp, and then that piece actually was accepted as an image for the, you know, so the roll on, I mean, and that's just the things that I get to see is quite extraordinary. So for me, there are so many different layers. So there are economic, looking at it for economics from the Shire's point of view, but there are also that sort of, you know, whole diversity and upskilling of the artists, because all of a sudden they're having to work on a computer. And I went from having hard copy forms to actually doing the forms online, and sometimes I would still actually physically fill in online because people don't have those skills right the way through. So you're giving a whole diversity of skills happening there. And then of course you have to work out how to sell the rigging things, and you know what way that's going to happen too.
So I think I better stop you talking there, because I want you to get that image off the screen. I think I'm much better with grey hair. So I think one of the other benefits that we actually see on the Shire is the fact that we do get a lot of economic activity with visitors to the place. The cafes are always busy, a lot of traffic going around, and people get to places that we might otherwise not have been to. I think actually finding your way from the back of Jurang and Bamborough down to Pat's place in Aries Inlet is pretty exciting on those back roads, and so I can recommend it to anyone. But hopefully you'll have it. And there's our lovely mayor over at
Ashmore.
Ashmore Arts. So Ashmore Arts has probably been about 4 years it's been on the trail.
Well, Ashmore is a wonderful example. Ashmore Art, which is an amazing community of art studios on the outskirts of Torquay. They're an example because they're not open. They're, you know, during the year. They're just they're private studios, artists doing their thing. But on the arts trail, good old Stewie, he's created almost an entire art trail in itself. And people go out there and you get absorbed for the whole day. They have a mud issue too out there, Pat. But
I know
that's a fabulous success story, I think, of the arts trail.
Yes, it is a terrific thing, and Harriet's just corrected it's 6 years, so time does go fast.
Stewie.
Yeah, it's terrific to actually be, and that's been expanded over the time, and I'm sure part of that's come from the sort of visitation and success and understanding of what it's all about. Yeah. So there are some other artists that have actually benefited from getting involved in the trail, and therefore sort of involved more in the community. Cinnamon, you've probably got some stories about other artists within our community that you might want to talk about.
Oh, I do. Well, I mean, there's lots that I'm seeing come up on the screen here, but just personally, I know when Minerva joined the trail, she's a Italian-born artist who moved to Australia a couple of years ago, but only moved to Anglesey, I don't know, not very long ago. Last year was her first arts trail, and that was her way of meeting the community and for the community to meet her. And she was very excited to be part of that. I was probably one of the ones that encouraged her and helped her set the studio up and showed her how it worked and where to put your flags and, you know, don't do this, do that. And, you know, and she did a wonderful job, and her work is delightful and individual, and she's since gone from strength to strength. And I believe this year she's just launched her website. So that's fantastic. Catherine Brennan is another one, the lovely Catherine Brennan at Salt and Pepper Gallery. She had only literally just moved, in the process of moving from Bendigo down to the arts Surf Coast Shire when Julie pounced on her and hounded her to be part of it. And even though she actually worked that hard, she was ill for the first time. But now her studio is a big part of the trail, and she met and became part. She went to all those bookbinding and community arts trail, and that she said that's how she met everyone. And now she's a very much part of the fabric of the Surf Coast Arts Trail. So they're just a couple of my stories. Pat, do you know of people?
Yes, but it's not only the people too. It's really, you just don't know where your next phone call might come from out of the blue because of the arts trail. And that happened to me because a few years ago I got a phone call totally out of the blue from a person who was she was employed by the Great Ocean Road Chocolatieri and Ice Creamery, and they were building their big new factory and showroom just out of Anglesey there. And she said that they were looking for a local artist for them to commission for them to paint 12 watercolor paintings, of which these images were going to be put onto their gourmet range of chocolates. And would I be interested? I thought, oh yes, I suppose I could be interested. But what they'd done, they'd got the arts trail map from the year before, and they had gone through the whole map, and they'd made a short list of anybody who said that they painted in watercolor. They were specific, they wanted a watercolorist, and who had a website. So out of that, this is a few years ago, out of that, I think it was about 3 people qualified for their short list, of which I was one of them. So after meeting with them for a few times, I got the commission to paint their paintings. But if I hadn't been on that arts trail, well, I wouldn't have got the best commission I've had. So anyone who's out there and you're on there and you think, oh, I don't know about this, you never know where it's going to come from. You don't know that next person who's going to drive in your driveway and look at your work. You don't know. So my recommendation would be just to go for it. And you just never know what's going to happen. And also, I know that Nikki Perkin and Sue Corbett, the Arts Trail, has been immensely beneficial to them. With commissions and work sold, and again, not knowing where it's coming from. You don't think anyone's going to visit you, but you'll be amazed. So
well,
it's
just
great.
on Sue Corbett, I don't know if you've got that lovely picture, Julie, but
I'm hunting it up now.
Yeah, I knew you were. Sue and John had literally stepped off the plane and just got back from their Italian trip. Oh, isn't that beautiful?
There
and
it is.
They, because Sue's a real goer, she said, no, I'm going to be on the trail. Bags weren't even unpacked. And but luckily the art they'd been working on, they'd shipped back before they got back. So they unpacked everything, literally still on top of the crates they arrived in. And so she works in marble and bronze. She'd been in Italy for 3 months. And
3 months.
I actually went and had a sneak peek during the trail as well, like on one evening or something. I got up there because how wonderful and how lucky the punters were on this trail to see people who just literally got off the plane and all that beautiful artwork. And of course there's the scenery from their place. The hang gliders go past at eye height in Fairhaven, an amazing venue. So Sue and John, hi. I know you're tuning in.
So that is it's some beautiful settings around that, and I must say, Pat, I mean the chocolate, your commissioned artwork on the chocolate does make that chocolate taste so much better.
So much better, I know.
So much better. So thank you very, very much for that.
Oh, pleasure, Margot.
And I think one of the things that actually we do see is that being able to grow it and for people to actually make more of a living out of their artistic talents, I think is just a terrific thing for our Shire and for all the people that actually live there. And we've got, I'll just do one more.
Yeah.
I think it was last year or the year before when so the Surf Coast is recognised as one of the top 5 creative places right throughout Australia. So it's a really a credit to all of you as artists. Yes, Cinnamon, sorry.
Just on that point, I know at one stage Julie started sending out a survey after the trail to the artists, and part of it was did you make any sales on the day, but then also did you get any follow-on work? And one year I looked at my sketchbook where I keep all my running day-to-day stuff, and I looked back at the jobs I'd had that year, and pretty much 90% of the work I'd had all year all came from the arts trail, and that's that. I mean, I'm a full-time artist. This is what I do as my living, and the arts trail is definitely something that's literally put me on the map. People know who I am, where I am, and they come back year after year. So it's definitely worth doing. If you're an artist out there who's never been on it, get on board. And even this year of the digital arts trail, it's been well worthwhile getting on board. We mightn't have the sales flying out the door on this weekend, but people now know your website, they've seen a little video, they feel like they've met you, and they can always refer back to your social pages or your website. So you never know. Well worth being part of it. No.
Yeah, and so sort of Julie, do you want to sort of just give us a little bit of more of a sort of overview of the development of where we've actually got to in the last couple of years? And I just, before Julie does that, I just want to remind people that we'll wrap up fairly soon with what I'll say, and the group will say, and we'll take your questions that you might have. So think about your questions and pop them through. Julie.
So there's been an exponential growth of visitors, but there's also been an exponential growth of artists. So that's been an interesting challenge for us to work out how we fit them on the map, literally, and to make it an ongoing event. So having this pause on the actual physical arts trail is probably a really great opportunity to pause and revisit how things are going to go forward in the future. I don't think you can swap the actual visiting an artist in their space for the online. So whilst it is great to have the videos and et cetera, to actually have that opportunity to be welcomed into the studios safely without feeling that you're going to have to buy. So if you're going to go to an artist at another time of the year and you want to knock on their door, you may feel a bit uncomfortable that you're actually going to be expected to buy something, but at least with the arts trail, it is that open door. So whether the arts trail changes and the artists, I know that the Anglesey artists have had many pop-up arts trails themselves at other times. There may be that sort of opportunity and things too. I'm not going to put a finite on it, Margot, because I'm one of the punters these days.
Yeah.
so I can leave it to other people to work out how it's going. But I mean, it is one of my babies. I mean, these are my co-parents on the trail, but it's been a really exciting time, and to meet the variety of people across the Shire too. For me, that's been really important, to have that engagement across the Shire. It's not just the coastal people, the inland people have a wealth of talent, and having places like Droll Car host a number of different artists has been really exciting. So people have gone off and had another experience of a different thing in that way as well. So we never know what's around the corner.
No.
Well, that's right. And Julie, I think John wants a bit of relief for his back on that photo. So
It's such a lovely photo.
it is a great photo, but he did actually send a little message through, and I know what he feels like, because I wanted to break
You've got a
my hair.
reputation.
Yes.
So I guess the baby of the Arts Trail's growing up, and for this year it's just sort of taking a bit of a digital gap year, and hopefully we'll be back in another format, and who knows where that will end up. But I think, to continue the spirit of things this year, whilst we're all sort of a little bit locked down, isolated and socially distanced, we'll probably still have some of those in our lives next year, but it's probably pretty amazing to actually put all these things together to just sort of remind us that life is going on in other places. Is there anything sort of additional that you would like to sort of say before we take some questions, perhaps, in the first instance, and then we'll go to Cinnamon?
I think everything's been covered really well. Thanks, Margot. I just perhaps say about the digital area and how many artists there are in the Surf Coast Shire, because I now teach both watercolour and oil painting. I teach at the Torquay Community Centre and at the Anglesey Art House and at the Geelong Art Society, and we had physical classes happening. But then when this lockdown started, I heard about this program called Zoom. So I've started my teaching online, which is a real hoot, because I didn't know how you spelt Zoom, let alone know what it means. Now it's like what Julie's saying, it's not as good as being in the physical classroom, but it's bloody close to it. It's fantastic. And I just wanted to say that I have two women who are both 93, and they are on Zoom in my watercolour class. And I just think that is mind-blowing, to think that that's happening in today's age. And in this isolation, they can actually see their friends, they can see people painting. And we might, you're saying about, hopefully we can go back to the real world again, and of course we all want to do that, but this has been great today to be able to come and tell everybody just how it all happened and what's happening and where we're going in the future, hopefully. But there's so many damn artists in the Surf Coast Shire, and I don't know if my skates are going to keep going fast enough to keep up with them all. But it's just been fantastic this morning, and have a few laughs with everybody. And I hope the viewers have all enjoyed it too.
And you, Cinnamon?
With me.
Yeah. Look
no,
at that one. Oh, beautiful Anglesey.
That is a beautiful shot of my streetscape. And again, perhaps this project wouldn't have come along without the Arts Trail, because the streetscape was a community initiated project. So, they know that I'm there now, thanks to the Arts Trail. No, I've really enjoyed this morning. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I hope we can answer your questions if there's any questions.
Well, we do have a question. I did read the one. Harriet, you're meant to say the questions, aren't you?
Well, no, I mean, there are a few, they've come through, but one of the things I did want to tell you, everyone, was that there was quite a lot of clamour earlier for a documentary. So, budding filmmakers, etc., out there.
A documentary
on the Arts Trail. Someone thought maybe Backroads, ABC, or, ABC Arts. So there you go. But yeah, one question that came through from Sue Tate to both Cinnamon and to Pat was, how important do you think council support has been to the success of the Arts Trail?
100%. 100% important.
Good answer, Cinnamon. That'll continue.
Well, I mean, the artists, and as I've shown, the artists can do it themselves. And I was instrumental in organising an Anglesey art trail for a few years, but I stopped doing it because I want to do my art. And if I'm organising and ringing artists and printing posters and, all that stuff the Shire's been doing for us, it can be done, but it's nowhere near as effective. And to have a supportive Shire, you know, I often say to people, it's win-win-win. It's win for the artist, it's a win for the people that are visiting, and it's a win for the Shire to be seen to be supporting their community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with that, because I believe I'm the artist. That's my job. And what Cinnamon says, we could do everything else, but if you're doing other things, you don't have enough time, and you really need headspace to be able to do the creative part of it. And if you're doing, you just can't do it. So we're really, really grateful. We couldn't do this without the Shire's support. And I was gobsmacked right at the beginning of when we were setting up the Arts Trail, that I really thought that the artist should be have some contribution to monetary wise to set this going. But Julie was very adamant that no, she thought this was the Shire's point of view, that should happen. So we are just so lucky to have such a supportive Surf Coast Shire in our Shire to support us, and it is a win-win for everybody. So we're very grateful to the Shire for their support.
I feel a bit embarrassed sitting here listening to that. That question did not come from me, okay?
And we weren't paid. We weren't paid to say that either.
No.
But
now that you think about it,
I'll send around the champagne later on this afternoon.
Okay, cool.
You know,
we had a really
stop it on the doorstop.
We had a great question from Helen Gibbons from Surf Coast Arts. She wanted to know, to each of the people on the panel, what's one thing you'd like to see to support the future of the trail, you know, post 2020? Might start with you.
One thing, I actually don't want to see it getting any bigger. You've only got so many people that can go to so many places, and even though they're going to choose their area or go through their list of who they want to see, you can only actually do so many people. If you have too many people, the word will get around, and as I said earlier in the interviews, that your best form of advertising is actually people's word of mouth. If it gets too big, you're going to get people saying, oh, there's no point going to that place because there were so many people there, I couldn't get a car park, I couldn't get in to see them. So my fear is I don't want to see it get too big.
I would just, before anyone else breaks in, I'm still very interested in your answers. I would suggest, though, that we're not going to see us be able to move this volume of people through the Shire on one weekend for some time. I would think it's going to be years. So I think. Yes,
but you were just asking about.
I know, but I'm just saying.
So that was where we're at, things being the same.
But that's, I suppose that's what I'm saying, is that you know, that might help. We might have to think about doing it over successive weekends or something through the zones. I don't know, but you know, that would help.
I wouldn't start this conversation here, Harriet.
No.
Not a conversation.
It would help with the numbers.
I don't think we know where we'll end up.
It would help with the numbers, is sort of the point I was getting to. But Cinnamon, what do you think would be, you know, for next year? How does it look?
Well, one thing I can say is I believe that this year's portal experience is only going to assist and broaden the experience moving forwards. I mean, even when we can have people visiting our studios, they've got that option to look up YouTube and look at the video, or to check out the website. And so, and also I've loved being able to visit other people's studios virtually this year. Yay! That's been really nice. So I think the digital trail is only going to, you know, like we've said, it can never replace the normal, but it could be the new normal. And as my brother said in Perth, it allows people interstate and even international people to have a look into our studios. So it's kind of broadening it, moving forward.
Julie, what about you? What do you think where was that question? What's the one thing you'd like to see to support the future of the trail?
I mean, and I understand the worry about the size of things, but one of the benefits has been the inclusiveness. In the early discussion, Pat was talking about the Nillumbik Arts Trail, which costs $200, so you've already got limits, and people basically curating it. Now, you can have a curated trail, but that's completely different to actually having one which is supporting your community. So you have to be really careful, because whilst they're, I mean, I love all of the fact that we've got amazing professional artists and ones who are successful, but they're going to be professional and they're going to be out there anyway. But there are going to be people like Minerva and Catherine even who are new to the Kids to the Block or even emerging, and to be able to have that support of having a toe in the water and getting going. And the punchers will pick who they're going to visit too. So it's you've got to be, you know, fairly careful about not being too elitist in some ways for me, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And whilst the Zoom and things like that is there, it still is limiting people and their abilities.
Not as good.
That's right.
It is, yeah, from the artist side of it, but also from the people who look to see what's out there too. So not everyone's going to know and be comfortable doing this too. Anyway, sorry, I'm not putting it down. I'm just
no, but it's true. What's, you know, real life versus you know, mediated by a screen. But Margot, you're a counsellor, so I'm, you know, and Helen did ask, just for a short period longer, she did ask that question to go to everyone. What do you think about next year and, you know?
Well, yeah, it's a difficult thing to predict sort of what the world will look like next year. But, you know, the essence of things, and I sort of think about, you know, how many places you can get to and should you combine things. But the essence of this event is being able to go to people's studios and see where they work and how they work. And I just sort of think that we've got to be creative about how that might look in the future, if there's restrictions on sort of doing that, if there's more people, how we could actually allow for that to be something that we could experience maybe over longer periods of time. I just think that the success factors are about us getting into people's studios and looking at what they do in the work environment. It's not necessarily about going to an Eagle's Nest, which is great, but you can do that in the weekend, or the art space, you know, that's sort of thing. Just loving to see what goes on and how people work.
And also, I think the success is the one weekend.
Yeah.
You know, people tend to not, once they've been out one weekend, it only takes a real hardened, dedicated person to pack the car and do it again the next weekend or the next weekend or the next weekend. So I think that's the success, that it is over one weekend.
One weekend, I agree.
Unfortunately, you know, it would be good to spread it out, and it may have to in the future. But like Julie said, this is a discussion.
Yeah, until we know
off camera.
what's going on.
Yeah.
But definitely it needs to continue in some way.
Absolutely. I think there's a definite consensus there. So I'm just trying to read through here. So many people just saying they loved learning about the history of the Arts Trail, and, you know, you guys are so inspiring, the fact that you've shared this with us, and, you know, I particularly am very grateful for that too. A question, okay, sorry, I read that one. The viewers have loved it. Sorry. Okay, so here's the question. How important do you think that the Arts Trail wasn't abandoned this year due to COVID for the momentum and future life? Can I just say something? As the person who didn't abandon the Arts Trail this year, do you know, it didn't even occur to me. I just knew that you're not allowed to abandon the Arts Trail. What do you think?
Wasn't an option.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that talks about the importance of this event, you know, like it's such a huge event for the the entire community, not just the arts community. And, you know, would be a bit like cancelling Christmas, surely.
Yeah.
Well, it's kept it in people's minds, and I think that's the important thing. And discussions like this and other discussions you've had on Portal have been, I've found, really interesting to get to know people that I know. You know, I see them all the time at events and things, but to actually hear about their history and what led them to this point, I've found that really fascinating. So it's been a wonderful interlude. And the weather's been that shocking. It's been nice to be able to sit inside and watch things that are interesting. Still being involved in the arts over this weekend. It's been good.
Well, I think it's really lovely. Like, it's been fabulous for us to, you know, be able to, I know with the whole Portal team, to be able to share, like, do some upskilling with people, and to see people of all ages and all ilks go out. You know, I mean, that's creativity, that's artistry. You go out there and actually try new things and shoot themselves in their home studios and, you know, embrace it. I think, you know, that's been quite amazing, you know, from your parents, Cinnamon, and gorgeous Roger Brown, to Minerva, you know, Minerva with her beautiful script in a language that's not her first, you know, and it just, yeah, we can't be with each other. But so, yes, that people are talking about diversity in the trail evolving, and I think that they're definitely going to do, you know, this little moment of reflection is really going to help us. Okay, so when we think about it for next time we can do it, yeah, how do we get the best of all of those worlds? Question for Cinnamon from Tashina: how long did it take to complete your Moon Times A4 artwork?
Yes, good question. I saw that. I couldn't work out how to answer it. You know, I couldn't believe how much extra time I had when I stopped doing it. It kind of just grew. But in the end, it would take me a good couple of weeks. So gathering the information, phone calls, etc., and then actually physically sitting there and drawing it. Although I've realised I still love drawing in black and white. I do love that process. So it was kind of a bit of a guilty pleasure of my own anyway. But yeah, a good 2 weeks every month. So yeah, in amongst family and trying to live off your art as well. So yeah, I remember that July 2006. I just had my second child, and I was sitting there doing the thing, and I think I'd had a phone call where I was trying to follow up someone that hadn't sent me information, and I said to Rowan, you know what, I think this is going to be the last one. And he went, fair enough. So yeah, it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah.
I've got another question from Helen Gibbons. It's probably aimed more, well, I probably have the knowledge to answer this, around did the Shire assist with the filming of the studio visit? So
No.
Helen, what we did was the studio visit. I mean, Helen's been these studio our studio tours. So we set up that whole series of workshops in June called Elevate, which was all aimed towards helping people to be able to film their own studio tours. I also know that some of our amazing local area coordinators like Molly Vaughan, etc., went out and actively filmed for people at their place if there were people living on their own and things and didn't have someone who might be able to help them. So I do want to shout out to those local area coordinators, because they came on board for a 2-day event and they've stuck around for 3 months and they've been amazing. But generally what we did was we just tried, again, you know, as the Arts Trail has been done on a shoestring budget for a long time, I took a 2-day budget and turned it into a 3-month event. So yeah, you know, we did what we could in terms of helping to upskill people to do it themselves. But we haven't had any money for sort of, you know, flash production values or
obviously
like that.
I'd just like to say some of
Otherwise,
our videos,
we wouldn't be doing this
yes.
via Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other questions have we got down here? Sally Groom, what about the idea of a coast and hinterland? Okay, so Veronica McDonald and Sally Groom both talking about what about the idea of a coast and hinterland separate events? So to, you know.
We have discussed this in the past. I'm not saying any more. on camera.
No, moving along.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Moving along. Your time's running out.
All right, so I'm going to just dip in here because it refers to what Pat and Cinnamon was saying. How do you decide which end, when, who's going to go first, etc., etc.? And I know that Golden Plains did do the split, and I think it killed the arts trail for them.
Yeah.
So you've really got to consider that a lot of the people will have exhaustion and won't do both lots. So yeah, interesting discussion.
I think that's right. You sort of you might end up only going to the things that are around your own home instead of going off and seeing the fancy cows out at the Track Gallery out in Jurang and Dean's Marsh weaving. It's, you know, there's some great sort of things that are take you to all different parts of the Shire.
It's interesting, this little side discussion that's happening, because it's none of it's stuff we haven't thought of already. So, you know, we've had many discussions. And I'm sure, Harriet, you will have moving forwards.
And
many
Pat
more.
and Cinnamon and I spent a lot of time in discussion last year, as well as these lovely women held my hand. But guys, I'm looking at the time, and I know that we have a very special virtual tour starting at 12:30. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you all of our guests once again for being with us. I'm so grateful. You're very generous. It's fabulous to laugh with you on a Sunday morning as we talk through like the realities of, you know, what, when you're getting big events like this together, what it actually looks like behind the scene. You know, you either have to laugh or you cry often.
Yes,
so
or both.
that baby you've raised, ladies, can I tell you all, we all love it. Thank you so much for your hard work, your commitment, and your willingness to come back and talk about it and be, you know, open and honest.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also particularly thank Councillor Margot Smith, who's been wonderful. Margot, I don't know why anyone hasn't made you a moderator before. You're funny. I think I'll be inviting you to lots more sessions. Everyone at home, thanks for zooming in with us today. Don't forget to tune in next Sunday for the next of our, the third of our big picture conversations. Join Stacey Bobile in conversation with Deirdre Carmichael, Richie Bennett, John Foss and Peter Day about art, activism and place. And don't forget to check out the studio tour videos. If you can't get to them all this weekend, they will be available as videos on Facebook. Apart from that, all of the details are available at www.surfcoastartstrail.com.au. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and see you next week. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.